Chapter 14. What you're saying is crazy, insisted Seba, as Ace gathered around the campfire with 10 or so other members of their party. We need to attack in force if we are to get past the hive's defences. Perhaps Seba is right, Ace, said Maria, a young woman a few years younger than Ace, whose gentle nature and steadfastness had earned her the affectionate title of Mother of the Community. The Charl are weak. A massive attack could do them a great deal of damage. We're 10 fighting people at the very most, Ace pointed out. I'm not going in for any senseless heroics. This is a secret raid, right? We're doing this to save Seba's brother, Chell, from ending up on the Charles dinner plates, okay? She glanced over at Seba. She wondered if he knew that she couldn't care less about the life of his brother, whom she had never met. But by saving his life, she hoped that Seba would owe her one. He was a good fighter, and she needed him on her side. Damn! This is what comes from travelling too long with the doctor, she mentally scolded herself. I'm getting as manipulative as he is. The fewer of us who go in there, the sooner we'll all get out, she said. I don't want any more deaths on my conscience than is strictly necessary. That shut Seba up, but he still glowered moodily at her as, with a blackened twig, she made a sketch of the hive in the dry earth. Calling the Charles base a hive was, she realised, in fact a misnomer. She remembered a trip with the doctor to Africa a long time ago, and the termite mounds which lined the dirt track road they'd travelled along. That was what the hive most resembled, a giant termite mound, even though this one stood about 50 metres high, making it about a third of the size of the Great Pyramid back on Earth. So what do you suggest, Ace? Asked Maria. A simple female, she would sway whichever way the wind was blowing. Ace was woman, so her words had more weight than Seba's. How many Charl do you reckon there are in the hive? Asked Ace. The others looked at each other and shrugged. About 4,000 or 5,000, suggested Skull, a grizzled, middle-aged, matter-of-fact man, whom Ace liked for his hardiness and simple approach to life, but mainly because he usually agreed with her. And they're pupae, of course. If they're like insects back on Earth, Ace began, and the others looked strangely at her. A place a long way from here, she explained quickly. But if they are like Earth insects, there'll be a hell of a lot more than a few thousand of them. 100,000 would be more like it. Now, with that many of them down there, the heat in there is going to be incredible. Together with that stink of ammonia, there's hardly going to be any oxygen in there at all. So how do we get in there? Sneered Seba. I suppose you just happen to have oxygen masks for all of us. Don't be a dunghead, Ace riposted. The Charl need oxygen as much as we do. So how do they survive in their hive? Asked Maria. Easy, said Ace, and recalled the lecture a Maasai chieftain had once given her and the doctor as they stood by a termite mound in the Great Rift Valley. You should listen to this, Ace, the professor had said. You never know when it might come in handy. They build thousands of tiny tunnels leading from the centre up to the surface of the nest. That way, the hot oxygen-poor air rises from inside the nest to be replaced by the much cooler air from outside. A circulation of fresh air is created throughout the hive. I'm impressed, Skull said. You're an intelligent woman, Ace. Maria, who wasn't particularly intelligent, was also impressed, but still couldn't quite grasp Ace's plan. What exactly are you proposing we do, then? Ace grinned. We enter the hive through the ventilation tunnels. Hey, I know it's corny. I've seen all those movies where the hero escapes through the ventilation system. But won't there be Charl in the tunnels as well? Asked Skull. Ace shook her head. Not if they're like the termite mounds we have on Earth. If the Charl inhabited the ventilation shafts, it would defeat the whole object of the tunnels. So when do we go? Ace glanced up at the sky. Just afternoon, when the sun's the hottest. They'll all be drowsy then. Skull, you come with me, she said, and opened up her weapons pouch, taking out 2 small pistols, which he gave to him and Seba. "What's this?" he asked. "A blaster." "A weapon?" "That's right. Standard Space Fleet issue. Much more effective than the bows and arrows and muskets that you lot use. It shoots a concentrated beam of plasma, enough to blast a careless Dalek all the way back to New Skaro." "Dalek? Boy, are you lot ever a long way from the main space lanes." "You should know, Ace," said Seba darkly, "as you travelled here in your ship." "Yeah, that's right, I did. Seba, you'll come with us as well. It's your brother we're rescuing after all. The least you can do is identify him." 2 hours later, the sun was at its zenith, and the heat was almost unbearable. Ace passed around rehydrating tablets from her weapons pouch. Without them, they would never survive the long journey to the hive. She squinted up at the sky. Unlike on Earth, there were hardly any clouds in this planet's sky to offer protection from the sun's rays. "I wouldn't be at all surprised if the ozone layer hasn't been buggered up as well," she thought grimly. "The Jarl really screwed up when they chose this place for colonization. It's going to take some serious terraforming before it's made even halfway habitable again." Rather than approach the hive head-on, Ace had opted to go to the foot of the cliffs on top of which the hive was built. There they would scale the cliff walls, hopefully avoiding any child guards which might be watching over the shallow sea the hive overlooked. It was a plan which Seba, predictably, opposed, arguing that they would never survive the longer journey, even with Ace's rehydrating tablets. But a threatening gesture of Skull's blaster, and Ace's argument that it was much better entering by the back door than risk coming across a party of Charles scouts heading for the nearest shantytown in search of fresh meat, convinced him. Grudgingly, Seba agreed, and followed Ace and Skull off to the coast. As they reached the pebbled beach, Ace looked out to sea. The ocean seemed unnatural. It was calm and still, undisturbed by any wind, and the squawks of the seagulls as they wheeled and gyred in the breeze. That sound, that she always associated with the sea, was noticeable only by its absence. "A dead sea on a dead world," she thought, and shuddered. Once, when she had been a teenager, Ace had loved the unfathomable mystery and unpredictability of the sea and the sounds of its waves lapping on sandy beaches. Now she preferred the harsher blackness and colder silence of deep space. 3 years of commando activity did that to a girl. Skull and Seba looked up at the white cliffs and the base of the hive, about 50 meters above them. It seemed an awfully long way to climb in this heat. "The sooner we start, the better," Ace said, and hammered a spike into the base of the cliff wall. "Watch out, boys," she said. "It's chalk and limestone." Slowly, the trio made their way up the face of the cliff. At the halfway point in their ascent, Ace stopped to allow Skull and Seba to catch up with her, and turned to look again at the sea. As she looked out over the water, she raised a hand to her glare-resistant glasses and activated a touch-sensitive control. The focusing in her glasses responded instantly to the command and adjusted itself automatically, offering her a magnified, if not quite telescopic, view of the horizon. It had been her own invention, and it had only taken some mild persuading on her part to get the professor to make the adjustment to her sunglasses. Far off in the distance, she could just make out a hazy blue coastline. She frowned. For some reason, it seemed familiar. "Don't be such a bilge brain," she reproved herself. 3 years with the professor and 3 more with Space Fleet, and you're acting like a bloody tour guide to the Milky Way. With a grunt, she turned herself to the matter in hand and pulled herself up to the top of the cliff. Skull and Seba soon followed her, and all 3 gazed up at the hive. Close up, it seemed enormous, and was made of sun-baked mud and earth. At intervals of every few meters, there were tunnels, letting out the hot, bad air and letting in the fresh oxygen. Ace had been right. They weren't guarded. Now what? Asked Seba. Now, we go down into the larder,